No, I thought this session that focused on the East African community was extremely useful because the community is about popular participation. So the presence of private sector, women, youth, political leaders, trade partners, Trademark East Africa was very, very helpful. I'm excited about East African integration. It's moved very, very fast. It's both deep and wide. There are many challenges that we still have to work through, but at the pace at which we are going, I think is commendable.
I felt the session was very valuable. I think we had a wide range of expertise across public sector, private sector, and everything in between. So I felt it was quite value-adding to hear the divergent points of view. We all come at it from different angles, of course. From my perspective, of course, mainly on the international trade side. I think my takeaways were really that a lot has been achieved. There's still a lot that can be done and should be done, but it is going to require a massive effort from public sector players, private sector players, and of course NGOs and special purpose vehicles in order to move further forward.
The session was fairly interesting. The good thing is that we had a mix from governments, from the East African community itself, represented by the Secretary General, from the private sector, and from Trademark East Africa. And these have been the institutions that have been pushing the East African agenda forward. And the important thing to say is that in the audience were then the people who are actually doing it from the ground. These are the citizens. These are people who can come, and they did come with very specific questions about things. And so I think that mix ensured that the conversation went in a way that was actually useful.
I think the key takeaway for me from this session was just the increasing role of women when it comes to trade. And I remember what Mukisa Kitui said as he opened up that, trade is now becoming more beautiful just because more women are being involved. But what was also really good was to see and hear the different initiatives that either the private sector and the government are doing to make sure that women now participate and benefit more equally.
The panel on East African integration, I think, went really well. Good attendance, great questions from the audience. And I think in terms of my takeaways, really there is a general consensus on the real need for political will. Political will is so important in pushing things through, and we see a great example of this under the Northern Corridor programs. And I think also recognition that people need to work together to get things done, and also that perhaps the East African community agenda is not ambitious enough. We could be doing a whole lot more, especially since the things that we're doing are things that were spoken about even way back. I learned today as far back as 1967. So when the community first began in its first iteration. So yeah, I think those would be the key things.
Well, I noted that East African community has really taken gigantic steps in its integration agenda. I noted that the intra-ESC trade has grown from $2.6 billion to $8.6 billion, which is really tremendous. They are making a lot of headway in reducing the cost of doing business, but that still remains a challenge. Another challenge remains the free movement of persons across the region. However, it was gratifying to note that the ESC will be introducing a single passport for East Africans to travel outside the region.
The session was very informative, and I think the biggest asset we have to such forums is the sharing of information, and also for private sector where we don't have a platform to engage with government, we use platforms such as the forum that has been presented today to be able to give government our feedback. So especially for our company, which works along the Northern Corridor, we've engaged with initiatives such as a single customs territory, which affects movement of cargo, along the corridor, and it's supposed to be a facilitator. So we've seen the good side of the single customs territory, but we've also seen the areas that need improvement. Now we only need a platform where we can share this with the government so that we can actually be able to facilitate trade across borders.
It was great to see the shared optimism across all the panelists on the whole East African project. It was important to hear from various practitioners in their own respective spaces what kind of progress they're seeing, but also to hear about the challenges. One of the key takeaways was one of my contributions that, look, I continue to see some risks to the project, which I think need to be addressed by the leadership of the region. Issues of governance, issues of rule of law, contract enforcement, peace and security for our people. These are critical, because if countries start falling apart, what is going to follow is the community falling apart.